Hope you're having a good week so far. What do you know? We're almost to the end of the semester. What a weird, wild ride it's been. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so last time we looked at public art as activism. We looked at public art made to raise awareness or affect some sort of change in the art world and beyond. This week, the topic is participatory, collaborative, and interactive art. Some of the first examples of participatory art were these happenings that you may have heard of by Alan Caprow. Happenings were theatrical events created by artists in the late 50s and early 60s, and they were usually collaborative and participatory. In Yard, for example, Caprow randomly scattered piles of tires all over the floor or ground and invited visitors to climb over them. He was inspired by Jackson Pollock's drip paintings. Just as Pollock had a certain amount of power over his drip paintings, the way it looked in the end was still very much left up to chance. Same as in his example on the right down there, women licking jam off of a car, which was exactly what it sounds like. These participatory events blurred the line between what was life and what was art, what was an everyday movement or action, and what was a performance piece. And actually, a lot of what we've looked at so far in this class, especially last week, falls into one of those categories: participatory, collaborative, or interactive art. Whether we're looking at Felix Gonzalez Torres's piece, in which visitors were invited to take a piece of candy from the pile, symbolically taking away a piece of his deceased lover with them, or the AIDS quilt, where each panel was made for a different person lost to AIDS, and not necessarily by artists, but by everyday people who were in mourning, or Suzanne Lacey's artist project, in which women from different walks of life in Brooklyn came together for conversations about feminism, gender, race, and more. Or my personal favorite, the playful seesaw at the US-Mexico border wall that invited people to come and connect with someone on the other side. In each case, the audience's participation and/or interaction with the artwork was absolutely essential. Clearly, it wouldn't be the same if the seesaws were just sitting there unused. The Wall of Respect, which we talked about a few weeks ago, is another example of collaborative art. And we read a chapter about the Wall of Respect by Setu Jones that week. And you may remember that I mentioned he's not only a writer, but also a working artist who lives in Minneapolis. One of his most popular works was Create, a multi-year project that took place in St. Paul, Minnesota. Jones's year-long listening tour engaged St. Paul residents in conversations about food traditions, attitudes, rituals, and access. In fall 2014, he held a community meal for 2,000 at a half-mile-long table set in the middle of the street. The menu was inspired by food stories of the world cultures that comprise the demographics of the neighborhood, and the produce was locally grown by organic farmers.
What it is a meal for 2,000 people at a table a half a mile long on Victoria Street here in St. Paul. I've been living in Frogtown for the last 18 years. Frogtown is one of the most diverse neighborhoods in all of St. Paul. So it's always accepted the most recent immigrants wherever they were from. I would see this endless parade of people walking in one direction, my neighbors, and then coming back with bags of groceries, knowing that they had just shopped at the local convenience store a block away. The thing that jumped out at me was that people were intimidated with making healthy food choices. Welcome to Frogtown. We are standing right here at the intersection of Victoria Street and Sherburne Avenue. And right here is where the head of the table will be for Create the Community Meal. There will be no traffic, so we won't have to go back and forth like this. The street will be closed that day, and hopefully the residents along here will act as hosts. We're going to ask people to bring their own chairs. Should we ask people to bring utensils? We want this to also be a zero waste event. If you want to get to the other side of the table, how do you do it without walking a mile? These are the kind of things that I lay in bed and think about. How you doing, man?
The idea of 2,000 people to actually see and realize how many people that really is at a single table requires a tremendous amount of production planning. It's a highly collaborative and creative enterprise that ultimately I think is going to, in one way or another, involve every person in the city.
What I want to do is to work with local farmers. And that's part of the reason why we're focused on Victoria, because there are a number of urban agricultural initiatives. We want to highlight many of those farms, in addition to food produced by people in this neighborhood who might have farms elsewhere.
I think a project like Say Twos, I think it's going to be a huge awareness raising, and it's trying to reach communities that are not necessarily involved with this movement.
This is all about food justice. This is all about people who are my neighbors, my friends, my colleagues, my co-collaborators, all working together to make an impact and change and affect the food system.
It reminded me of a more famous piece by the artist Rikrit Tiravanit called Pad Thai, which took place at a gallery in New York City in 1990. And he hosted a couple other events similar to this one later on throughout the 90s. Again in 1992, and I think a few others after that. For this landmark piece, the artist converted a gallery into a kitchen where he served Pad Thai for free. Tiravanit is one of a number of artists whose work has been described as relational aesthetics, a term created by curator Nicolas Bourriaud to describe the kind of art emerging in the 1990s. Bourriaud defined relational aesthetics as a set of artistic practices which take as their theoretical and practical point of departure the whole of human relations and their social context, rather than an independent and private space. Can you think of any other artworks that we've discussed so far that might fit into that category? Claire Bishop, whose writing we also read for today, has written about relational aesthetics as well. Coincidentally, by the way, she was also one of my professors during my doctoral program. In her essay on collaborative art from 2006, she noted the recent emphasis on restoring the social bond and providing a space for creativity and communication, which she saw as otherwise lacking in contemporary society. MacArthur Park, which we also read about for today, became known for violence after 1985, when prostitution, drug dealing, and shootouts became commonplace. When the lake was drained in 1973 and 1978, hundreds of handguns and other firearms were found disposed of in the lake. Beginning in 1983, when the Otis and Parsons School of Design launched an interdisciplinary public art program in LA, artists started contributing to the revitalization of MacArthur Park with sculpture, architectural detailing, murals, mosaics, and much more. Like the previous examples we've seen, this work was a collaborative endeavor with goals that reach far beyond art. This was art with a social purpose. As we start to reflect on the semester, what are some of the takeaways that you would note about public art? What makes for a successful public art piece? How is the public sphere changing? And how can art in the public sphere bring people together? When has it torn people apart? What is the role of collaboration and participation in public art? Why are politics and social justice so often expressed in the public realm rather than in museums and galleries? These are just some of the questions that I'd like us to continue mulling over long after this class ends. Let it inspire your work as artists and critical thinkers in your own projects outside of GSU. All right, well, that's it for this week. I hope you're all doing well. Please keep in touch. As always, let me know if you have any questions at all. All right, have a great week.